in-person church gatherings considered an essential service or not? Church as we know it is not about the building, but about the people. And amid a global pandemic where people are asked to distance from each other, some in the Christian faith and other religions are crying out for in-person gatherings, even if it's against COVID health restrictions. Our next guest is a minister at the Church of God in Steinbach, Manitoba, who has been fined twice for allowing the congregation to meet in person. Thank you for joining us today, Minister Tobias Tissen. Now, tell me, what happened on November 22nd?
Thank you for having me on the show today. And on November 22nd, we had our drive-in service planned, and we advertised it as being the safest parking lot in Manitoba because everyone was literally going to stay in their vehicles with their windows rolled up, and except for the pastor and a few people directing traffic in the parking lot. So when we got there, police had blocked off our driveway and prevented us from entering our parking lot to proceed with our planned drive-in service. And so we just used loudspeakers and kind of did what we planned. A few of us were in the parking lot, but the majority of people were literally parked on the shoulder. And we asked the police why they blocked us and asked for the order, and they couldn't produce one. So we attempted to pull in and thereby blocked off the entire highway. So it was an intense standoff for sure. And
that hasn't stopped your church from continuing to meet, even though the restrictions are clear in Manitoba that churches are not allowed to meet in person. Why do you continue to meet, even though the RCMP continues to restrict you from doing so?
So it has not stopped us. I have personally reached out to RCMP and tried to negotiate and tell them that, if I had an alternative of taking a fine over having our driveway blocked, I'd rather take the fine and be able to still get into our parking lot to have a proper drive-in service. And so this past Sunday, like 2 days ago, we were able to do that. We had a very smooth drive-in service. Everyone enjoyed their time, and we were blessed. But afterwards, I did get a ticket personally, and the church got one too. So this time it wasn't such an intense standoff.
What would you say to those who say that Christians need to be an example of how we should respect and obey authorities? What would be your response to that?
My response would be that, yes, I agree, and I do pray for my government, and I do respect them, but when they come in contradiction to God's command of not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, I would go with the scripture that says we must rather obey God than man.
There have been open letters by other pastors in the Manitoba area you're probably familiar with, who have asked churches like yourselves to follow the restrictions outlined by the province to stop meeting in person, but otherwise meet online. Why do you see or interpret the scriptures as being meeting in person as opposed to meeting online?
I think that the scripture saying to forsake not the assembling, I don't view virtual or being at home online as being an assembly.
You mentioned that you're not asking for special treatment, but equal treatment.
Right.
What would the equal treatment be to whom? Who are you comparing the treatment to?
So I'm comparing that to, Walmart parking lot. People are allowed to be in there. They're even allowed to exit their vehicles and go into those stores. Costco is another example. And we see government saying what is essential and what is not essential for example, they would say that you can purchase different drugs, that's essential, or liquor stores are essential. All these different places are essential, groceries are essential, but church is not essential, and that's where I have a problem with. And
Okay.
literally, people
All
can
right.
be bumper to bumper in a Tim Hortons drive-through, and all these places, but all of a sudden for church, that's not allowed. It it doesn't make sense to me.
All right. Minister Tobias Tissen from Church of God in Steinbach, Winnipeg, Manitoba. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.